3 weeks after I buried my husband, his family told me he left behind a secret debt and that real wives do not let their husbands' obligations die with him. For almost 5 years, I sent $475 every month to a loan that never existed, while they called me emotional, irrational, unstable whenever I asked questions. What I did not know was that the company receiving my money had been created weeks after his funeral. His life insurance beneficiary had been changed after his death, and nearly $50,000 was being structured out of my account through a shell LLC. This did not end with an argument. It ended with a felony fraud investigation, a search warrant executed at 9:15 a.m., digital ledgers seized from their home, and prison sentences handed down in open court. I'm Elena, and this is how I stopped paying my husband's ghost and started building a federal-level case against my own family. Chapter 1. The Money I Paid to a Lie. In 2024, I was 38 years old, and for 61 straight months, I sent $485 out of my checking account on the first day of every month. I buried my husband in 2019. I buried my savings right after. I thought grief was the worst thing that could happen to me. I was wrong. From August of 2019 through June of 2024, I transferred the money without missing a single date. 59 payments made in blind loyalty, and then 2 more after doubt had already started whispering in my ear just to keep everything looking normal. 61 deposits into an account I never visited, never verified, never fully understood. My husband, Ryan Callahan, died in May of 2019. He was 35. I was 33. The accident happened on Interstate 84 just outside Boise, on a stretch of highway that curves gently until it does not. The state trooper told me the impact was immediate. That word stayed with me long after the funeral. Immediate. As if that made it easier to accept. 3 weeks after we buried him, my mother-in-law, Patricia Callahan, came to my townhouse in Meridian carrying a thick manila envelope. She was 67, recently retired from Ada County Administration, a woman who trusted paperwork more than emotion. She did not ask how I was sleeping. She did not ask if I had eaten. She set the envelope on my kitchen table beside a mug of coffee that had already gone cold and told me there was something I needed to know about Ryan's finances. Inside were printed statements and a payment schedule. According to Patricia, Ryan had taken out a personal loan in late 2018 to help his younger sister, Mallory, keep her consulting startup from collapsing. The remaining balance was just under $29,000. The monthly payment was $485. She looked at me steadily and said, "A real wife does not let her husband's debt die with him." I remember nodding. I remember feeling like I was being tested. Patricia told me she had already spoken with the lender. They preferred to work through one family contact to avoid confusion. She would manage communication, so I would not be overwhelmed. All I had to do was transfer the monthly payment to the routing and account number she provided. I did not ask for the original contract. I never called the lender directly. I didn't even know the official name of the lending company. At the time, that did not strike me as strange. It felt respectful not to question her. My doctor had prescribed anti-anxiety medication because I kept waking up at 3 in the morning, convinced I heard Ryan's truck pulling into the driveway. I signed forms without reading them carefully. I nodded through explanations I barely absorbed. The first payment left my account on August 1st, 2019. I remember staring at the confirmation screen on my phone, watching the notification slide across the top. Payment sent. My reflection stared back at me in the dark glass, eyes hollow, trying to believe I was doing something loyal. And then I kept doing it. On the first day of every month, my phone buzzed before sunrise. I would open my banking app while the house was quiet and still. $485 gone. I told myself it was temporary. 5 years and the balance would be erased. I stopped contributing to my emergency savings. I postponed a dental procedure that would have cost $4,200. I turned down a promotion opportunity at a larger veterinary hospital in Bend because relocating required money I did not have. In 2023, Desert Pines Animal Hospital reduced my hours by 10 per week when appointment volume dropped after the post-pandemic surge. My income shrank. I sat at the same kitchen table late at night, recalculating numbers on a legal pad. Rent, utilities, groceries, insurance, debt. That $485 never moved. I worried constantly about losing my health insurance. I told myself financial responsibility was part of love. If I failed at this, I failed at being her wife. There were small flickers of doubt. The statements always looked identical. No one from the supposed lender ever called me. But grief has a way of muting suspicion. I told myself Patricia had already handled everything. On March 18, 2024, I received a call from Treasure Valley Community Credit Union about a mortgage pre-approval application I had submitted the week before. I was not ready to buy a house. I just wanted to know if I qualified on my own income. The loan officer sounded professional but confused. He asked about the $485 monthly obligation I had listed on my application. I explained it was a personal loan in my late husband's name that I had been paying since his death. There was a pause long enough for me to hear my own breathing. He said, "Ma'am, there is no loan under Ryan Callahan's name in any national credit database. We searched opened and closed accounts going back more than 10 years. There is no installment loan, no line of credit, nothing reporting to his social security number." My stomach dropped. I asked if maybe the loan had been sold, refinanced, or moved off reporting. He said, "Even in those cases, there is always a trade line. There is nothing." I ended the call and stared at my phone. The screen had gone dark, and I could see my reflection again under the kitchen light. The coffee beside me smelled bitter and stale. I opened my credit report online. I scanned every account, every balance, every line item. There was no personal loan, no payment history, no declining principal. For a moment, I thought maybe this was identity theft, maybe some kind of financial fraud operating outside the credit bureaus. Then I opened my banking app and scrolled back to August of 2019. 61 transfers, each labeled with the same routing and account numbers Patricia had written on a sticky note 5 years earlier. $485 multiplied by 61. I did the math slowly, twice. If there was no loan, no lender, no official record of debt, then where had my money gone every single month since August of 2019? Chapter 2. The Paper Trail. I did not sleep that night. I kept seeing the number 61 in my head, like it was burned into the back of my eyelids. By sunrise, I had pulled every statement Patricia had ever mailed to me out of the storage box in my hallway closet and spread them across the kitchen table. There were 20 quarterly statements in total, cream-colored paper, identical formatting, the same polite paragraph thanking me for my consistent payments, the remaining balance decreasing in perfect mathematical increments. I forced myself to look at them like evidence instead of reassurance. There was no NMLS number anywhere on the page, no licensing disclosure, no website, no customer service line, just a post office box in Phoenix and a generic-sounding company name. For 5 years, I had never noticed. I opened my laptop and typed the company name into a search engine. Nothing. No official site, no Better Business Bureau listing, no reviews. I tried adding the word lender, then Arizona, then consumer finance license. Still nothing. My stomach began to twist. The next morning, I called in late to work and drove to Chandler to see Daniel Mercer. He was 71, semi-retired, a forensic accountant who specialized in financial fraud and asset tracing. His office sat in a faded strip mall between a dry cleaner and a bakery that smelled like sugar and burnt coffee. He listened quietly while I explained everything: the payments, the statements, the phone call from the credit union. When I finished, he asked one question. Have you ever spoken directly with the lender? No. Do you know the official name of the lending institution beyond what is printed on that paper? No. He nodded once and turned his monitor toward me. He opened the Arizona Corporation Commission database and typed in the name from the statements. After a moment, he stopped typing. There is a limited liability company here with a very similar name, Copper Ridge Asset Solutions, LLC, formed June 18, 2019. June 18th. Ryan's funeral had been May 27th. Daniel clicked into the filing. Registered members listed here are Patricia Callahan and Mallory Callahan. My chest tightened. That cannot be a coincidence, I said. He scrolled further down. The mailing address tied to the LLC was the exact same post office box printed on my statements. It felt like the room had shifted slightly off balance. What does this mean? I asked. It means the account you have been transferring money into is likely not a licensed lending institution. It is a business entity they created. He paused before adding something else. If the funds were sent electronically across state or federal banking systems under false pretenses, that can qualify as wire fraud. The word fraud sounded clinical and heavy at the same time. He asked for the routing number for my transfers. I opened my banking app and handed him my phone. He entered the numbers into a directory. This routing number is tied to a standard business checking account, he said, not a regulated lender. So there was never a loan. He looked at me carefully. There is no evidence of a legitimate loan. What this looks like is structured financial exploitation. The phrase hit harder than I expected. On the drive back to Meridian, my hands shook on the steering wheel. Structured, not accidental, not emotional confusion, designed. When I walked into Desert Pines Animal Hospital that afternoon, Hannah pulled me into her office. We need to talk about next quarter projections, she said. If revenue does not improve, we may have to reevaluate benefits for part-time staff. That includes health insurance. I stared at her. I already lost 10 hours a week. I know, she said softly. I am trying to avoid further cuts. As I walked back to the treatment room, I calculated numbers automatically. Rent, utilities, insurance. And for 5 years, I had been wiring nearly $500 a month into a company my own in-laws created weeks after burying my husband. That night, I opened Instagram and searched for Mallory. Her account was public, photos from a wellness retreat in Sedona, a new Peloton bike visible in the corner of her apartment, brunches in Scottsdale with captions about growth and resilience, fresh salon highlights tagged every 6 weeks. Last year, she had called me crying, saying she might not be able to afford her lease renewal. I remembered sitting at my kitchen table reassuring her that Ryan would have wanted me to help. Scrolling through her page, I felt something colder than anger. 2 days later, my phone buzzed during my lunch break. She will not keep paying forever. We need to figure out an exit. My heart started pounding. A second later, another message appeared. Sorry, wrong person. She had meant to send it to her mother. My hands were shaking as I took a screenshot. The casual tone of it felt worse than the words themselves. Comfortable, strategic, as if my monthly payments were a business model they were planning to sunset. That evening, I drove back to Daniel's office. I showed him the screenshot. He read it silently and then leaned back. This is not a family misunderstanding, he said. This reads like coordination. It suggests intent. Intent. He explained how limited liability companies can be used to receive funds without triggering traditional consumer lending oversight. He showed me how the formation date aligned almost perfectly with my first payment. He pointed out that there was no registered lending license associated with the entity. What they did, he said carefully, could fall under criminal statutes for financial exploitation. potentially wire fraud, depending on how the funds were transmitted. My pulse was steady now, almost calm. So every month, I said, they watched the transfer hit that account. That is likely. And they kept the balance schedule to make it look legitimate? Yes. The grief that had dominated my life for 5 years began to feel different, sharper, focused. Daniel folded his hands. This was not a misunderstanding, he said. It was structured. The word landed heavier this time. Structured meant paperwork, planning, formation documents filed 3 weeks after my husband died, a business checking account opened in advance of my first payment, statements printed to create the illusion of debt. As I gathered the copies of the corporate filings and slid the screenshot into my purse, a new question surfaced. If they were willing to create a company in order to take my money, what else had they created in my husband's name that I had never thought to check?
Chapter 3. The Insurance Layer. The question about what else they might have created in my husband's name stayed with me long after I left Daniel's office. So the next morning, I brought it back to him like another file that needed to be opened. He did not hesitate. "What about life insurance?" he asked. Ryan had a policy through High Desert Freight Lines, the logistics company where he worked. It was not large, just $18,500, but at the time I barely registered the amount. I assumed it had gone to me automatically, folded quietly into the blur of funeral expenses and joint accounts. "I thought it paid out to me," I said. Daniel gave me a long look. "Let us confirm that." He called the insurance carrier while I sat across from him, my hands clenched in my lap. After several minutes on hold, a representative came back on the line. The beneficiary on file at the time of claim was Patricia Callahan. My ears rang. "That cannot be right," I said. "I was his wife." There was a beneficiary change form submitted on June 2, 2019, approximately 2 weeks after the date of death. June 2nd. Ryan died on May 17th. Daniel requested copies of the original beneficiary designation and the change form. When they arrived by secure email, he printed them and placed them side by side on his desk. The signature on the change form resembled Ryan's, but something was off. The slope was different. The final stroke lacked the pressure he always used. "Do you have authentic samples of his signature?" Daniel asked. I pulled up scanned onboarding documents from High Desert Freight Lines. Ryan's signature there was clean, confident, consistent. Daniel compared them carefully. "This does not look like natural variation," he said. "And there is no original wet signature, only a scanned form. If this was submitted after his death, that is insurance claim fraud, possibly forgery." The representative added one more detail. The claim check in July of 2019 had been mailed to the same post office box listed under Copper Ridge Asset Solutions, LLC. The same box where my 61 monthly transfers had gone. I felt the blood drain from my face. Between the fake loan and the life insurance payout, they had taken over $48,000 from me and from Ryan's death, nearly $50,000 built on lies. I remembered the afternoon Patricia had sat at my kitchen table with a stack of papers and a pen. "It's just paperwork from the accident," she had said softly. "Standard forms." I had been medicated, exhausted. I signed where she pointed without reading line by line. I trusted her because she was his mother. Now I wondered what I had actually signed. 2 years earlier, at Thanksgiving in 2022, I had tried to express small concerns about the statements. Ryan's cousin leaned toward me and said, "You cannot stay stuck in grief forever." Patricia followed calmly, almost pitying. "You are grieving irrationally, Elena. Not everything is a conspiracy." The table went quiet. I felt exposed and unstable. A few weeks later, I noticed I had been removed from the extended family group chat. No confrontation, just exclusion. Back in Daniel's office, he tapped the printed documents. "This is no longer a family dispute," he said. "This is potentially a criminal investigation involving wire fraud, insurance fraud, and financial exploitation." The word criminal changed something inside me. For years I had felt guilty for questioning them. Now I felt justified. "What do we do next?" I asked. "In Arizona, we have one-party consent recording laws. You can legally record any conversation you are part of. If they believe you are still compliant, they may speak freely." He added another point. "We also need fresh activity to establish ongoing conduct. Evidence preservation is critical if this becomes a felony case." On April 1, 2024, I woke before sunrise and opened my banking app out of reflex. For a split second, I expected to see the transfer confirmation. My body reacted before my mind did. Phantom payment. My chest tightened even though I had already canceled the automatic transfer. I realized how conditioned I had become to watching money leave. Instead of closing the app, I manually sent another $485. Then I sent one more on May 1. 2 additional transfers to establish a continuing pattern. Daniel said recent transactions would strengthen probable cause for a search warrant. That afternoon, I called Patricia while recording. "Hi, sweetheart," she said brightly. "Did you send April's payment?" "I did," I replied. "Can you remind me which lender this is through? I need it for my financial records." There was a slight pause. "It's handled privately," she said. "You do not need to involve outside parties." "Is it under Copper Ridge?" I asked carefully. Another pause, longer this time. "You are confusing yourself again," she said. "Focus on healing." Healing. The manipulation felt obvious now. A week later, I met Detective Lauren Ibarra at the Maricopa County Financial Crimes Unit. Daniel had referred me directly. She reviewed everything in silence. The LLC formation documents dated 3 weeks after Ryan's funeral, the routing numbers tied to a business checking account, the beneficiary change form with the questionable signature, the claim mailed to the same post office box, the screenshot of Mallory text, and the recorded calls. When she finished, she looked at me steadily. "You have documentation of structured electronic transfers into a company formed by the recipients shortly after the victim's death. You have a suspicious beneficiary change that may involve forgery. You have recorded conversations suggesting coordination and concealment. This meets the threshold for probable cause." My hands were steady. "What happens next?" I asked. "We request a search warrant. If approved, execution would be June 12th, simultaneous at residence and business address." June 12th, less than 2 months away. As I stepped out into the Arizona heat, the numbers ran through my mind again. Nearly $50,000 tied to my husband's death, structured payments, a forged signature, a shell company created weeks after we buried him. If they were willing to change a life insurance beneficiary after he was gone, then this was bigger than money.
Chapter 4. The Fall. For 6 days before the warrant was executed, I had to perform normalcy. I answered Patricia's calls. I replied to Mallory's texts. I kept my voice steady even when my hands were not. 3 days before the raid, Mallory called me in the middle of the afternoon. "Hey, can you co-sign something for me?" she asked, her tone casual. "What is it?" I said, already recording. "It is just a lease in Scottsdale. My credit took a hit. It is temporary." Temporary. The word almost made me laugh. "I am restructuring my finances right now," I replied carefully. "I cannot take on anything new." Silence stretched between us. "You are not planning anything, right?" she asked. My pulse spiked. "Planning what?" I said lightly. "I don't know. You've been asking weird questions lately." "I'm just organizing paperwork," I said. "Nothing dramatic." After we hung up, I replayed the recording twice. Suspicion had crept into her voice. They were sensing movement. On June 12, 2024, at 9:15 in the morning, I sat in my car in a grocery store parking lot in Gilbert. My phone buzzed with a text from Detective Lauren Ibarra. Executing. Across town in Mesa, officers in tactical vests knocked on Patricia's front door. When she opened it, neighbors were already peeking through blinds. I later saw the body cam footage. An officer read the search warrant out loud while another stepped inside. Simultaneously, detectives entered the Scottsdale office suite registered to Copper Ridge Asset Solutions. By noon, Lauren called me. "We found a digital template for the quarterly statements," she said. "Editable balance fields, pre-formatted language. It was all automated." I closed my eyes. "There's more," she added. "A handwritten ledger. 61 payments listed by date, notes besides several entries." "What kind of notes?" I asked. "Comments like, projected through 2026, and a running total." Projected. They had planned for me to keep paying for 2 more years. Lauren continued. "We also recovered personal property belonging to you." My chest tightened. "A necklace, engraved Evelyn Quinn." My grandmother's necklace. I thought it disappeared during the chaos after Mayan's death. I never accused anyone. I assumed I misplaced it. It had been in Patricia's jewelry box. By late afternoon, both Patricia and Mallory were in custody. When officers placed Patricia in handcuffs outside her house, she stood straight, chin lifted. "This is a misunderstanding. She misinterpreted everything." Even in that moment, she framed it as my confusion. Court proceedings began in July in Maricopa County Superior Court. The charges included wire fraud, insurance claim fraud, forgery, and financial exploitation of a grieving spouse. Assistant County Attorney Mark Delaney met me in the hallway before the first hearing. "The documentation is strong," he said. "The ledger, the corporate filings, the beneficiary change form, the recorded calls. This supports felony-level conviction." Felony-level conviction. The phrase felt heavy and precise. In August, Patricia's attorney attempted to argue that the payments were voluntary family support. He said in court, "Miss Callahan believed she was protecting her son's legacy." Mark responded calmly, "The evidence demonstrates structured deception and intentional financial exploitation. The defendant formed a company weeks after the victim's death and used it to receive electronic transfers under false pretenses." Structured deception. The judge listened without expression. By October, plea negotiations intensified. The defense recognized the weight of the digital evidence. The ledger alone contradicted any claim of confusion. In November 2024, the plea agreement was finalized. Patricia received 30 months in state prison, followed by 5 years of probation. The court ordered restitution in the amount of $46,525. Civil damages of $35,000 were awarded separately. Wage garnishment of 20% of post-release income would continue until restitution was satisfied. Between the fabricated loan payments and the redirected life insurance payout, nearly $50,000 had been taken and documented in open court. During sentencing, I stood and delivered my victim impact statement. "I told you you were grieving irrationally," I said, looking directly at Patricia. "But you were calculating numbers while I was planning a funeral." She did not look at me. No apology came, no tears, no admission. In December, Patricia's attorney filed a notice of appeal. Within weeks, it was denied due to the strength of the documented evidence and the plea agreement. On the day of sentencing, Judge Harold Whitman adjusted his glasses and spoke slowly. "The court finds that the defendant engaged in financial exploitation of a grieving spouse. The abuse of trust and calculated nature of the scheme constitute aggravating factors in this criminal sentencing." Aggravating factors. Those words echoed in the quiet courtroom. For 5 years, I had doubted myself. I had questioned my memory, my instincts, my stability. Now, the court record said what I could not say out loud back then. It was not grief, it was fraud. As I walked out of the courthouse into the late autumn air, the numbers replayed in my mind. 61 transfers, $18,500 in life insurance, nearly $50,000 extracted from a widow who trusted her family. They had structured the theft with paperwork and silence. The court structured the consequences. And for the first time since Ryan died, I wasn't bracing for money to disappear from my account. I was watching it move in the opposite direction. Chapter 5. Quiet Karma. In December of 2024, the first restitution payment landed in my account. It was not dramatic. There were no fireworks, just a deposit from the Maricopa County Clerk of Court with a case number attached to it. But when I saw the amount, I sat down in my car outside the clinic and let the reality settle in. For nearly 5 years, I had watched money disappear on the first of every month. Now I was watching it return. Between the fabricated loan and the life insurance payout, nearly $50,000 had been taken from me. Every dollar documented, every dollar acknowledged in court. Seeing even a portion of it come back felt like oxygen filling lungs that had been tight for years. The first thing I did was schedule the dental procedure I had postponed since 2020. $4,200 to fix the damage I had ignored while sending $475 a month into a lie. When I sat in the dentist chair and felt the numbness spread, I realized how long I had been clenching my jaw. I repaired my car next. The check engine light that had glowed for 2 years finally went dark after a proper service. I stopped calculating every trip in terms of risk. In early February, I bought a used 2021 Subaru Outback, $21,000 paid in cash. I remember the sales manager asking if I wanted financing. No, I said calmly, I will handle it. Control felt quiet, not loud. In January of 2025, I accepted a new position in Flagstaff at a regional veterinary hospital, $68,000 a year, full benefits. I submitted the application myself. I interviewed without asking for approval from anyone. I signed the offer letter with steady hands. Driving north through the pines, I realized how small my world had become after Ryan died. Grief had shrunk it. Fear had confined it. Financial abuse disguised as family loyalty had tightened it even further. Now it felt open again. On February 1st, 2025, I woke automatically before sunrise. My body still expected the old routine. For years, the first of the month meant loss. I reached for my phone and opened my banking app. There was no outgoing transfer, no $475 vanishing into a post office box, no confirmation banner sliding across the screen. The phantom payment was gone. Instead, I manually transferred $475 into my own high-yield savings account. The same number that once represented deception now represented discipline. That amount had once funded a structured scheme. Now it funded my future. A few weeks later, I received another court notification. Patricia had filed an additional appeal. For a moment, the old tension crept back into my chest. But in March, the appellate court denied it. The ruling cited the documented evidence, the voluntary plea agreement, and the recorded admissions. There would be no reversal, no surprise redemption, no technical escape. Restitution payments continued quarterly. Wage garnishment orders were processed. The system moved slowly but steadily, just like Daniel had promised. Friends occasionally asked if I was dating again. I was not. I did not need to replace one dependency with another. I needed stability. I needed clarity. For a long time, I thought revenge meant confrontation, public humiliation, a dramatic confession. What I learned instead is that real justice often looks administrative. Court transcripts, financial records, signed judgments, money moving back across the same channels it once left. One evening in April, I opened a small box that had followed me through every move since 2019. Inside was my grandmother's necklace, returned as evidence after the case closed. I fastened it around my neck and looked at myself in the mirror. I was not the woman who signed documents without reading them anymore. I was not the woman who doubted her own instincts because someone older and louder told her she was grieving irrationally. What happened to me was financial abuse disguised as family protection. It was structured deception wrapped in language about loyalty. Nearly $50,000 was taken from a widow who trusted her in-laws. That number will always be part of my story, but it is not the ending. The ending is this. On the first of every month, I still open my banking app. I still pause. Old habits do not vanish overnight. Then I move $475 into my savings. I am not paying ghosts anymore. I am building equity. If you've ever been told you are too emotional to understand money, too sensitive to question paperwork, too unstable to demand proof, remember this: documentation is power. Check signatures, verify licensing, save screenshots, trust your instincts. If this story resonates with you, stay. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment if you ever trusted the wrong person with your finances. Stories like this lose their power when they stay hidden. Silence protects schemes. Records protect people. 5 years ago, I buried my husband. For too long, I buried my confidence with him. Now, on the first of every month, I make a transfer in the opposite direction. I stopped funding their scheme. I started funding my future. If you value stories where strength is quiet but unshakable, subscribe.